I'm Julie Barkey with this Senate update. Two bills with the intent of providing more educational opportunities for students were rolled out in a news conference on Monday. Now, those bills include a scholarship fund for low-income families to send their students to a tuition-based K-12 school. The other is a savings account to allow families with special needs students to have their child educated in a setting they believe is a better fit.
Thank you for coming. My name is Lee McGrath. I'm an officer at Oak, Opportunity for All Kids. Two things are certain in the debate about Minnesota's educational crisis. The first is that the educational establishment cannot mend itself. The second is that parents are the solution. Parents care more about their children than any educational official. What they lack is the resources. Today, we're going to talk about two pieces of legislation that empower parents and build on the long tradition dating back to Orville Freeman of empowering parents to choose the schools that work best for them. I am honored to be here with these great kids, as well as Senator Hann, Representative Fenton, Senator Senjem, Representative Crecia, and the talented and hidden, sometimes hidden Representative Erickson, but always in our hearts. What I'd like to do is first give you a quick overview of each of these two pieces of legislation, and then what will happen is that Mitch Pearlstein, the president of Oak, will give some remarks, give you a flavor of what Oak is, and then Representative Crecia and Senator Senjem and Helen Dahlman from Risen Christ will talk about the Opportunity Scholarship Bill, and then Representative Fenton, Senator Hann, and Russ Gregg from Hope Academy will talk about the Educational Savings Account bill for children with special needs. Is Winan Rasmussen here? And Winan will also talk about that as well. Thank you, Winan, for being here. So the first bill is the Equity and Opportunity Scholarship Bill that Senator Senjem and Representative Crecia are offering and have introduced. It is Senate File 1396, and it is a vehicle for parents, teachers, and administrators to come together to form scholarship granting organizations and give those scholarships to children who qualify because of their parents' economic status of 2 times the income level of reduced priced meals or lower. It is a scholarship up to 70% of the average general per pupil spending. And donors who contribute to these scholarship granting organizations can receive a tax credit against their Minnesota liability up to 80%. So in other words, this bill will put $100 million into the hands of scholarship granting organizations to fund alternatives for children who really need alternatives and empower parents to make those choices about what the best school is for their children. The second bill is an educational savings account bill for children with special needs. It is Senate File 1313 and its House corresponding file. It is based on children who have had an IEP or who have been determined by the resident school to qualify for special education. It is to pay for things like non-public school tuition, tutors, textbooks, transportation, online curriculum, therapies from licensed and certified practitioners, individual classes purchased from public schools, and supplies. It is based on the statewide average per pupil expenditure plus a portion, just a portion, of the special aid money. With that brief introduction, let me now turn it over to Senator Senjem and Representative Krisha to talk about the Opportunity Scholarship, the Equity and Opportunity Scholarship Bill that they're author. Let me turn it over to Mitch Pearlstein, who is going to talk about Oak before Senator Senjem and Representative Krisha.
Representative Erickson, I feel your pain. Morning all. Let me be very brief. Oak is a new coalition. We are the new major coalition for expanding educational freedom in the state of Minnesota. You have met Lee McGrath. Also part of our coalition is the Minnesota Catholic Conference. Sean Peterson is here. The Minnesota Independent School Forum, Tim Benz and Jim Field are here. I can see what I'm doing. The Lutheran Church Missouri Synod Minnesota District, they're part of this coalition, though Pastor Fred Hinz is traveling today. Daniel Latier is here from Better Ed, and Jim Bartholomew from the Minnesota Business Partnership. We look forward to working with folks, parents, leaders throughout the state to expand educational freedom in the state of Minnesota. My great thanks to everyone who's here and our legislative leaders. Let me just add this. The research is clear. For many kids, a private school with a religious animation, those schools work best for many kids. And we owe it to them and to their families to make these opportunities available. I say this as someone who has never, as a student, spent a day in a private school in my entire life. But I know what, again, the research says, but personally, I know what it has done for the children, now adult children, in my family. And I am very, very thankful. We need to expand those opportunities. And when it comes to educational freedom in Minnesota, we used to lead the way. If you go back to the mid-1980s with Governor Rudy Perpich's leadership, we were the first state with post-secondary education options or enrollment options, and Representative Connie Levi also led the way on that. We were the first state with intra-district choice. We were the first state with inter-district choice. If we jump to 1991, we were the first state with charter schools, thanks to Governor Arne Carlson, Senator Amber Reichgott-Young, and others. And then in 1997, we were the first state with tax credits for certain educational expenses, again, thanks to Governor Carlson's leadership. We ran the train, we led the train, we were the locomotive, but we have been slipping back to the caboose over the years. Our job, continuing and ending the metaphor, is to get back to the locomotive, to be the locomotive of educational freedom in the United States. Thanks very much.
Senator Senjem. Representative Krisha.
Well, thank you so much. It's good to be here, and it's especially good to be here on behalf of this legislation that we're talking about today. And it is just so terribly important. I think the nuts and bolts of it have been offered up. I'm not going to get into that. But what I do want to say is this. We have many schools in Minnesota that are outstanding schools. We have many teachers that are outstanding teachers, administrators, and so on and so forth. But likewise, we have some situations in Minnesota that aren't so good. And we have situations where kids aren't getting the chance that they, I think, need. And as I think about maybe my epiphany moment on this, a couple years ago, we're on a bonding trip, St. Cloud Reformatory. They want $25 million for their new intake area coming into the prison there, about 4:30 in the afternoon, and this bus pulls up. I'm not going to indict Hennepin County, but this was a Hennepin County bus. Every week, about 35 new prisoners come out of Hennepin County to St. Cloud Reformatory. And they were ushered in and put in a glass cell, and I looked at these young men, and they were young, for the most part, generally speaking, in their 20s. And I thought to myself, Where have we failed these individuals? It's probably their fault they got in trouble, but it's not their fault in the sense that the opportunity maybe wasn't given to them. As I think about systems that graduate 53%, we can't afford to bet the future of our children on systems like that. We need to give them an opportunity to get out, if you will, to find another avenue. And this is what this opportunity scholarship legislation is all about, to provide for kids an opportunity to get out of their existing system and, frankly, to succeed. And that is as simple as it gets. And we need to do this. And I hope, as is mentioned, this is one more step along the road of education reform in Minnesota. It's not going to affect in great style the existing public system. We can coalesce and get along just fine together. But we need to give these kids an opportunity to succeed. And I see this legislation, as I said earlier, one more step along the way of giving kids an opportunity to succeed in Minnesota. So, Representative Kershaw.
Thank you, Senator. That's a pretty good bill. I should offer that bill. And as Senator Senjem talked about, this really is a very simple bill in a lot of regards. One of those is expanding options. And while we come down here, and if you look at the bills I've offered as many bills trying to help public education as well as other options and scholarships. And I believe, as I've come from corporate scenarios, business scenarios, and education, that you just don't tie yourself to one train. You don't tie yourself to one solution. And that's what this is about, is folks that if they want to be part of solving the problem for education, as I look around, where's Dominic at? Dominic and I were talking a little bit. Sorry, we weren't paying attention. We were talking. But it's folks like this that need opportunities. And if we have parents out there or we have individuals that are willing to donate money into a foundation, and if they're willing to be part of the solution, why wouldn't we allow that? And that's all this is about. This is about allowing other people to be part of the education solution so that these children have access to many types of educational opportunities, not just one or two. And whether it's scholarship programs for preschool or all the way up to opportunity scholarships that you see here in this foundation, I think that's good for Minnesota when we get people together who are trying to solve problems. And that's why I'm excited to be on this. I'm excited, as Senator Senjem said, all the things that are happening, and I believe in this a lot. I think this is just a great way to go.
Helen Dahlman, from head of school and president of Risen Christ, and Claudia Correa, a mother at Risen Christ, a mother of a child at Risen Christ.
Thank you. As Dennis said, I'm Helen Dahlman, president of Risen Christ School, which is located in the Powderhorn Park neighborhood of South Minneapolis. We exist to provide hope and opportunity for children from low-income and immigrant families through outstanding Catholic education. 95% of our students qualify for free or reduced price lunch. 83% are Latino and 72% are English learners. The average annual income for a family of 4 at our school is under $23,000 a year. Most students entering our school, no matter what grade level, come to us performing at least 2 grade levels behind their English-speaking middle-class peers. We have been successful in narrowing that gap by our laser focus on the fundamentals of literacy and mathematics, and by grounding all we do in the essence of Catholic schooling, the development of the whole child, mind, body, and spirit. As the first Catholic dual-language immersion school in Minnesota, we are developing fully bilingual and biliterate scholars who will be successful in high school, college, and beyond. We are transforming lives. To make Risen Christ accessible to low-income families, we charge tuition on a sliding scale based on family income. Even at a deep discount, the sacrifices some of our families make to enroll their children are dramatic. From accessing local food shelves and free stores to make ends meet, to choosing which one of their children they can afford to place in our school. No family should be forced to choose between food for their tables and the type of education they desire for their children. That's why I'm here today, to advocate for them and the legislation that promotes authentic parental choice options for low-income and disadvantaged families. Thank you. Now, one of our parents and staff members, Claudia, will tell you her story.
Okay, my name is Claudia Correa, and I came here to United States 13 years ago. I didn't speak any English, so I couldn't help my children with the homework. One of my daughters, Valentina, she was 7 years old, and at this time she went to public school. But she had problems to be successful in the school. The only way to put her in private school was with tuition assistant. To be honest, even when I had to pay $50 a month, would be impossible for my family. She was able to start at Rosin School in 6th grade, where she made a great progress. Now she speaks and reads very well English. Valentina chose to go to BSM for high school, and now is sophomore in Iowa State University, and she's studying biology.
Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Claudia. Next, Senator Hann and Representative Fenton are going to talk about the Educational Savings Account bill for children with special needs.
Putting parents in the driver's seat of their child's education. That is why I'm honored to carry House File 1529, Education Savings Account for Students with Special Needs. Parents know best the needs of their children, and this legislation empowers families, giving them more educational opportunities to meet those needs. It is time that we start thinking differently and offer big, new, innovative ideas. This legislation can positively impact the lives of children across the state of Minnesota, and I'm excited to be offering this. Thank you.
Senator Hann.
Thank you. I just wanted to make two quick points. One is that this bill is modeled on a piece of legislation, actual law that's in place in the state of Arizona that has been received very well, is very successful. It's done some really good things. The other thing I'd like to make as a point is I served on a school board for 8 years, and there's no question some of the most difficult conversations we had as a school district is how to deal with kids with special needs. The way the system is structured, parents who have their kids in the district, they may have some ideas on how to help their child. Those ideas may not be the same ideas as the school district. And so very typically, very often, they get into debates, they get into maybe some conflict about how to teach this child. And the school district, they're doing their job. They're trying to be protective of the public's money. They have a system. They're trying to make sure that their system is doing its job. But what it does create is conflict. And I can't tell you how many times we had issues where there would be parents going to mediation against the school district, or in some cases lawsuits. So you've got money, you've got time, you've got a lot of other things going on, but what's not happening is a focus on that child. And I think what this bill does is it puts parents in charge of deciding where they can help their child the best. And there's no one that knows that child better than the parent. I think this is a great opportunity for people in Minnesota. I think it's a great opportunity for our school system to try to reduce some of that conflict that goes on pretty naturally. I'm very proud to be a supporter and an author of this bill.
Thank you, Senator. Russ Gregg, head of School of Hope Academy, and Wyan Rasmussen, head of School of Hope of the Whole Learning Academy.
Hi, I'm Russ Gregg. I'm one of the founders and head of School of Hope Academy, a school in the Phillips neighborhood of South Minneapolis that's serving 400 low-income students K through 12. And I'm really excited about both of these bills. Just this week, I got the amazing news that 5 of our graduates just were awarded $800,000 in college scholarships, 4-year college scholarships for out of our graduating class. This is really a tremendous award for those students, and it's only possible by providing a kind of funding model for our schools where each of those students is scholarshiped up to about $7,000 apiece, and this kind of legislation would help open that opportunity to many more inner city students. Probably the hardest conversation that we have at Hope Academy is the one where a student has special learning needs, and where if they could get just a little more help we could keep that student at Hope, and the parent wants that desperately. And it's really the hardest conversation when we have to say, we have to send this student away because we can't service their needs. And so this special savings account bill would provide that kind of resource to our parents that would be so powerful and so needed to help the students with special needs at a school like Hope Academy.
I am Wyan Rasmussen, head of school at Academy of Whole Learning. The mission at Academy of Whole Learning is to serve families with children with special needs. All of our children have an autism spectrum disorder or an intellectual disability. We have many, many success stories. I'm going to tell you two right now. We have one student who came in. This is his end of his second year now. He's been at our school. The first week he came in, transitions are very difficult for him. And he walked in our front door, and he stayed there. And I mean, he stayed there for hours. He stayed there until he felt comfortable. We worked with him, we talked with him, we let him stay until he felt comfortable coming into the classroom. This took over a period of probably 2 weeks before he could just feel comfortable coming into the classroom and learning, and we allowed that. Now it is very fun to see him. He is on our basketball team. He is out there, he's playing, he's working with the kids, and he's able to transition into many different environments. Recently, though, we had a school dance, and for him, it was very difficult to go into the school cafeteria with the music blaring and the kids moving around, and he never made it past the front entryway. That's where he stayed, it's where he felt comfortable, and of course, you know, we let him, his parents kept an eye on him, but the amazing thing to me was he was never alone. Classmates joined him the entire time, and they were talking about who's going to be out there with him now, because I'm going to go back in and dance, and then it was just a marvelous time of that social opportunity that wouldn't have happened before. I have another student who came from a school where it was very difficult for her to stay in school. The sensory pieces of school, the sounds and the lights and the busyness of the school really made it impossible for her to stay in the classroom. And though her parents sought supports for her within her school system, they just weren't able to find them, and she ended up spending much of her years, her primary years, at home, not able to come into school. If you saw her in our school now, you would not recognize her. She's able to fully participate. So when we go on our into the community, it's still sometimes a little difficult for her. We offer her a lot of support, but in our school, in our classroom, you would not notice that she's unable to participate any longer. Our school is located in St. Louis Park, and yet our families come from all over the Twin Cities. We have families coming from Oakdale. We have families coming from Minnetrista, Andover, driving all that way. And sometimes in our Minnesota winters, that can be 2 hours. That's how dedicated our families are to receiving the educational options that they are seeking. I know that families are looking for these special needs choices, because this year, in just January and February, we had as many inquiries into our school as we did all of last year combined. So it is, the more people are finding out about our school, the more inquiries we are having. The biggest reason why parents can't come to our school is due to the tuition. It is a significant consideration for our families. Our school board has had many conversations. How can we make our school more accessible to a wider base of socioeconomic families, and yet keep it sustainable? It is a struggle that we have all the time. This bill would allow families to make this choice to come to our school without regard to their financial resources. We believe that families know best and can make that best decision for their children. They can be the advocates for their families. There's a letter going around on Facebook right now, and it was very timely. I'm glad it came. It was yesterday. And it was from a mother of a student with an IEP, and she is also a teacher in that same school. And she wrote this letter out of frustration, out of a cry for help. And she says in this letter, as a parent, I know exactly the services that my child needs. I know exactly what he should be getting. And yet as a teacher, I know we'll never be able to provide those services for him. At our school, we can provide those services, and we would love the opportunity to be able to serve more families in the Twin Cities. Thank you. Thank you.
Fine, thank you. It's now your turn. What questions can we answer for you?
How many students would be helped by each of these bills?
On the educational savings account, the number is unlimited. It is a function of parents making the choice, and this will save the state money. And so, whatever the number of parents on the savings account, Bill, it is roughly.
You just said you're talking about savings account.
On the scholarship granting organization bill, it is an $80 million tax credit program, and every scholarship is approximately the per pupil spending of $8,000, and so that is approximately 10,000 students.
There are three opportunities that your bills will offer that public education currently does not. Well, you talk about opportunities. What are three opportunities your bill will offer that public education currently does not?
Well, as far as the education savings account, what we're really trying to get at is every school, every public school has a special needs curriculum, a special needs department. They try to match up what they can do to meet the needs of the kids that come to the school. Part of the frustration is that they are sometimes unable to do that. As been mentioned, they may not have the facilities, the resources, or there also may be differences of opinion about how to address the need. And that has happened frequently. When I was on the school board, we saw this very frequently, that there'd be a debate. The parent would say, I know my child needs this, and the school would say, well, we don't do that, we do this, and we think this is better. And so you end up with a conflict. What we're recognizing here is not that there are new programs that need to be developed, it's just to allow parents to choose the kind of program that's going to be most successful for their kids.
Senator Hann, that money would then move out of the public
Right, the way the
school.
mechanism
Would
of
that
the-
create a funding inequity for the public schools if the per pupil funding is moving away?
Well, if the student leaves, then no. The reason why the funding goes to the school is if the student goes there. If the student does not go to that school, then there would be no problem because the money would follow the child.
Okay, and how does this dovetail too with your initiative last week that got a lot of attention to kind of blowing up the Minneapolis schools? How does this
I
work?
hesitate to use the word blowing up. I think the two things that are similar, I guess, if you will, is that I believe that education is an enterprise that works best when you have families making decisions and having those decisions being able to be acted on in reality. When you have a smaller school district, for example, what we're looking for is a stronger relationship between the families who have their kids in the school and the administration. And it's arguably, I think, true that the way the structure is there in Minneapolis today, that's not happening. But this is not about that issue. I think there's anything common between the two. It's the idea of recognizing how important parents are in the education of their kids.
If I could just comment to that too. I don't think there's anything common. I think they're two separate proposals. This really is about taking education back to the family, and it's about allowing other people to solve this problem. We have lots of options out there, and this is allowing, you mentioned the question, what three things would this solve? Choice, we can target to families of need, and portability. And these are things that not every family has. So depending on where your zip code is, sometimes you don't have the choice of going to certain schools. Whether that may be means, maybe that's transportation and so forth. This will help take those barriers away. The other thing that we heard in education innovation with some of the other ones is kids learn best in their own environment. And sometimes we need to take the kids and the families and put them with similar schools and similar families. They don't always have that option. And if public schools is your only choice, you may not be able to share in some of the cultural values or faith-based values that you have. This takes that away and allows us to start to put families together in areas that they may feel most comfortable and to take the barriers of financial means away.
How about past education initiatives? PSEO was mentioned, charter, open enrollment, all of those were bipartisan efforts.
Sure.
Where's the bipartisanship today?
Well, I think we have bipartisanship in the opportunity scholarships, in the scholarship programs that we see out there. I am. I'm authoring all those as well.
With Democrat and Republican.
Let's see. I'm trying to think.
Does it qualify as bipartisan? Do any of you have bipartisan bill authors?
And when we talk about the preschool scholarships, we had a press conference here with a number of Democrats that are up here as well. So when we talk at that level about getting choice and targeting families, there's a lot of bipartisanship, the scholarship programs that's out there. This is just an extension of that. This is just taking it into the K-12 and extending the opportunity for families to have choice and portability.
So will you be seeking, nobody has a DFL out there, just to be clear right now?
I hope so. I'll be trying to find them.
Okay. You haven't sought them yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
So question for you about the savings account. I noticed on the back it's saying then the local public schools would be relieved of the responsibility for filling those requirements. And a lot of what you guys talked about were options. So I'm curious if a parent were to say, you know, actually I do want my child who has certain special needs to be with students maybe who don't have special needs. Are they not allowed that option then because the public schools would be relieved of any responsibility, or how does that?
Well, there's nothing in here that requires anybody to take advantage of this program. And it does, in fact, provide that there may be things in the public school setting that the parents want to participate in. They would still be permitted to do that. This is simply a mechanism to allow the families to choose what kind of education structure is best for their child. That's all.
But as you were talking about with, like, you know, rifts or things that would happen, essentially this would take the public schools sort of off the hook because then they would not be responsible for fulfilling certain requirements.
If they're not enrolled in the school, then the public school would not have any responsibility to that child.
But they would then if the parent decided.
Right, and there, it happens today. There are some kids that go to the public school, they try to get their needs met, the public school says we can't do it, and there are times when the child is placed in a non-public school to try to help that child. But it's all being driven by decisions typically that the school district makes. We're saying that those decisions ought to be done with the parent's primary role being recognized.
Senator Hann, is there any church and state issues here? Religious education was certainly mentioned.
There
would be state dollars going to religious
entities. No, not at all.
Okay.
There are, the case law on this around the country has been very clear. We already today in Minnesota spend a lot of public tax dollars that go to private institutions. You go from colleges all the way down to elementary. Those things happen today. There is no conflict.
On the scholarship bill, what would the breakdown be? Would it mostly be students in the metro area, or are there some greater Minnesota students or suburban students who would benefit, either one of you?
Be statewide.
As I understand the bill, as we've put it together, it'd be statewide. So you can set up foundations that'll serve students statewide.
Right, but practical basis, is it mostly Minneapolis, St. Paul, or would you have?
That depends on the foundations and the donations as they come in. If we have a huge contingent of donations that happen up in northern Minnesota, then that's where a high concentration of dollars will go. But if we're looking at per capita and how they fit, yeah, I suppose you could look at the dollars as they flow in and how that may have densities. But it's statewide. And I would hope that, like in the St. Cloud area or Rochester, that they have strong foundations as well as the Twin Cities. I don't know, Senator, if you want to add to that?
And I would agree. This doesn't necessarily specify certain areas or geographical areas of our state, or race or anything like this. This is for kids that need it, and where situations exist where kids not advancing within that existing school system. The scholarship, the Opportunity Scholarship Program gives that child a chance to frankly succeed.
And with the scholarship, it's up to $8,000 a student and kind of a max probably of $10,000? Or was that an average number?
No, that's about where it is. $80 million, $8,000, $10,000.
Senator, in your home area, though, would there be very many, not Rochester, where you grew up, a more rural area, would there be very many students that would need this type of help?
Well, need or want, two different things, but certainly we have situations in our community, it exists all over Minnesota, where maybe a parent would prefer that their child go to a certain other institution, and this would give that parent a chance to do that in terms of the financial ability. So sure, it could exist in Rochester or anywhere else.
Senator Senjem, where would you peg the political appetite for school choice and school reform this year? You know, obviously the House last week with LIFO, the Senate's giving LIFO a hearing this week. Do you think there's something in the water that people are open to some change on this?
No, I almost do. And as I've listened and watched, I think this is the year. They will give change a chance, if you will. And just as in Minnesota, as we've stood out as a state for educational reform in the past, this is, I think, one more chapter in this, and it seems kind of exciting because all these ideas are emanating up, and I think some of them are going to stick.
What about the governor? Did they all die at his desk, though?
Well, they shouldn't. I mean, the governor, I think, has to sit back and think about this as well. I mean, these are our students that we need to, in fact, as I've said, give a chance to succeed. And I think all of us have a heart, and all of us, I think, understand that in some cases the existing system isn't working. If that's the case, I think we can all agree on that, then what is the outlet? This Opportunity Scholarship Program is one of those outlets. It may not be the whole answer, certainly, but it's one of those outlets that we can use, again, to give change a chance, to give kids a chance to succeed.
Achievement gap, do you think the scholarships directly address the achievement gap? Yes.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, let's, yeah, exactly, no question about it. We're going to take kids that are maybe failing in an existing system and make them successful in another system. That takes care of some of the achievement gap.
Because you know your chamber and your speaker has pegged achievement gap as one of his top priorities.
I certainly think that closing the achievement gap is of a dire importance, and offering these two proposals in committee and to hear the debate and to offer parents this opportunity is of utter importance to us right now. So yes, I think that this is another opportunity for us to close the achievement gap.